Thank you. My name is Becky Steinbruner. I attended the County Water Advisory Commission meeting last week, wherein there was an excellent discussion about the adjudication of Soquel Creek. I did video that, and I'll send whoever is interested the link to that discussion. But it was interesting because there was a retired water law judge there who had made decisions about the American River adjudication, and it was very, very interesting. So I'm happy to provide that video link if anybody's interested. Thank you.
Yeah, Soquel Creek turns out not to have a water master in James. It's not adjudicated. Okay, business, update on river transfer.
Right, we have Isidro Rivera from Santa Cruz here, so thank you for coming. And he has a couple items, both 3.1 and 3.2, he can provide input on. You know, he's actually the rep or the project manager for both, but primarily I think we're going to rely on him to give us an update on the aquifer storage and recovery part. The water transfer pilot project, also known as a water purchase agreement. Last Monday, the 3rd, we opened the valve, as you might have read in the Sentinel. This is the intertie between the city and the district, and that has been on since that day. It cycles about twice a day and transfers about 400,000 gallons each day, roughly a little less than that right now for the isolated zone that we're collecting samples on for
About an acre foot.
a little bit more than an acre foot a day. And so we continue to monitor that and sample within our distribution system for the various things that have been outlined in our monitoring plan. Now, I'm not sure, Isidro, would you like to update us on anything related to the city on that?
No, not really. I mean, just like Soquel Creek, we're trying to get an understanding of how that facility impacts our own operations. For us, it seems to be working more like an extra pump station, where as Taj says, it comes on a couple times during the day, just like we expect most of our pump stations to operate. So for us, it seems to be just an extension of our system, and it behaves just like an extra pump station for us.
And next winter, if everything looks like the water quality is okay, we would expand the reach of the zone and probably expand into all of one, and maybe into 2. It would run a lot longer then, and we would make sure that we wouldn't exceed the water diversions at the north coast. That's something that we need to also be careful of, not taking more than what's diverted. So
Or the city would probably
the
keep
city
track of
needs to
that.
keep track of that. Yeah.
We are.
Yeah. And this year, I don't think that's going to be an issue, but we're closely coordinating the transfer with the city. Any questions on that?
So can you take more water in the winter when there's, more water available? And then
That's
in
the only
summer?
time we can take it,
That's the agreement.
November
Sure.
through April.
Right now, the North Coast is not constrained like the San Lorenzo River where it's illegal. So the CEQA analysis, neg deck, I think what it was allowed up to 300 acre feet per year.
From the north coast.
From the North Coast at a discounted rate,
Mhm.
and because it's a trial pilot, and there's a lot of limitations on it. The contract is on, the MOU is on our website if you want to see it. So they've got to not be in a stage alert. They got to think there's enough water so they don't have to jeopardize their customers, basically. So.
Any feedback from the customers in the zone?
A lot
Or
of
your-
questions,
Lots of questions?
a lot of questions, no complaints so far.
That's good. That's really good.
Okay, we move on?
Question?
Sure.
Thank you. Becky Steinbruner. I am wondering if the district intends to negotiate an extension of the 5-year contract MOU with the city to recognize that it's taken 3 years to get to this point. I would like to see that, and I think it would be of best service to the district to extend this for the full 5 year of a trial period. And again, saying that it's taken 3 years to get to this point. And I'm just delighted that it happened. It's a great thing, and I'm kind of curious, maybe, Isidro, you'll talk about how the groundwater level monitoring will interact between the water transfer pilot project and the any ASR work that Santa Cruz City does nearby. Thank you.
So we're on to the ESR.
Good afternoon, it's Taj. Mentioned, my name is Isidro. I'm an engineer for the City of Santa Cruz Water Department. I am the project manager for both the water transfers and water exchange project, along with the city's ASR project. Then maybe before I start and give you an update on where we're at with ASR, maybe just put it into a little bit of context by just first saying that the ASR project for the city was broken down into 3 phases. The first phase, which we mostly completed to date, was mostly a technical feasibility analysis that sort of built off of the work that was done for the Water Supply Advisory Committee. So as part of the work for the Water Supply Advisory Committee, there were some assumptions made for the ASR work, particularly with certain injection and extraction rates, how much water could potentially be stored in the basin, and what losses were potentially, or we might see in an ASR project. So phase 1 was really more of an in-depth look at to try to see if those assumptions were, we're trying to validate those assumptions. And then again, like I said, we've pretty much completed most of the work for that phase. At the end, with the work we've done, we were able to conclude that most of the initial assumptions were validated. The work that we've done shows us that we can store up to 3 billion gallons, but again, we're putting it not just in the Mid-County Basin, but we're putting it both in the Mid-County and Santa Margarita. So we're counting on potentially storing 3 billion gallons in 2 basins. The other assumption was that we probably see losses in the 20 to 40% range. And the initial modeling work that we've done to date shows that we are within that range. For the Mid-County, we're seeing losses in the 25 to 30%, with the majority of the losses actually going out to the ocean. So you could argue in terms of whether or not that is a loss, because it's still within the basin, but it's just outside of that 1 mile buffer that's within the model. So that's why it's considered a loss. The other thing that sort of important from the phase 1 work is the injection rates for the Mid-County are roughly in the order of magnitude of 0.5 MGD, which again sort of validates the WASEC work that put injection rates in the 0.3 to 0.5 MGD range. And then the extraction rates that we're able to model with the groundwater model are in the magnitude of roughly 1 MGD. But again, a lot of the modeling, a lot of the work is work that we've done, not just for Mid-County, but for Santa Margarita as well. So with the information that we learned from phase 1, we were comfortable enough to say, let's go ahead and proceed to planning phase 2 work, which,
Excuse me. I haven't been all that involved in the ASR. So where's the water coming from that's going to be injected?
Yeah, I'm sorry. ASR is Aquifer Storage and Recovery.
Yeah, I know that
and
part.
So the excess water would be coming from our surface sources, which would be San Lorenzo and potentially our north coast.
Okay, so you have 3 million gallons extra when it rains?
So it would be spread out over our current planning period is we'd inject water into the basin over a 3-year period. So we would inject water over a 3-year period and then extract over a 2-year period, because the goal of the project is ultimately to meet our shortfall during our worst drought, which for us, modeling shows it would be the 76 to 77 drought period. Mm-hmm. So we would inject for 3 years and then extract for 2 years.
Yeah, and Isidro, I think that's an important part that I want to be clear. Their analysis is solely focused on solving their drought shortage, so it didn't look at recovering groundwater levels or anything like that. It's just to solve that. Whether they have excess is still to be determined, but we're focusing on getting that problem solved
yeah.
first.
Correct. All of the work that we've done today is just to solve the city's shortfall problem.
And what kind of, like, rainfall expectation did you have for the 3 years?
Yeah, so we,
A normal rainfall year? Or?
so we've modeled both the historical climate period, and we've also done modeling with climate change. And so obviously the climate change modeling shows that our project would need to be bigger than during the historical period. But if we go back and we model the historical period, we would be sort of timing that 72 to 75 time period. So that's the time period that we're looking at for injection, and then taking out in
Those are rainy years, I remember.
Yeah, but then it changes very dramatically, or very drastically when you're looking at the climate change. It's very different.
Okay.
So we potentially be looking at a project of like 1.9 billion gallons to 2.4 to 2.5 billion gallons in terms of what the city shortfall would be if we looked at climate change.
Okay.
Is this using,
During the historical period is less.
is this using the city's climate model or the mid-county climate model?
Right now, it's using the city's climate model. Right now, the city is looking at whether or not the city's model should be, we should continue to use it, because we recognize that there will probably be a different model used for the MGA. So right now, the question that we have, can we take ultimately with whatever is recommended for the MGA, can that be converted back and used with the modeling work that we've done for the ACP process? Can we take that one and convert it back? So that's a question. It's a pending question for us.
And then-
How many extraction wells were part of the feasibility?
So right now, for the historical period, we're looking at injection of roughly 5.5 MGD.
How many wells?
So if you take that 0.5 MGD, you're probably looking at 11 to 12 wells.
And that's
But
spread across both basins.
Spread across both basins.
And for those that don't know, Santa Margarita is up in Scotts Valley, so it's not like a separate basin here in our area. It would be a separate pipeline up there.
Yeah, so we would need a system that would inject on average about 5.5 MGD and then extract roughly about 4 MGD. So because our infrastructure would be sized for injection, because it's a little bit higher, so that would dictate the number of wells. So again, a lot of the work that we've done from an infrastructure standpoint, it's sort of based on looking at those two numbers, the injection capacity that you would need and the extraction capacity. But the assumption right now is that any new infrastructure would be built and paid for by the city. It's not relying on say, neighboring water agencies' infrastructure to get water into the ground and then ultimately water back to the city. So it would be completely new infrastructure.
At the NGA, the modeling results presented, maybe you could elaborate on that, because it was kind of hard to understand, but it looked like in the TU where you would inject and pull out, the question was, it was just so concentrated, it looked like that we were getting water levels that were dropping pretty significantly below protective levels. So are y'all taking the next step toward that?
Yeah, so really the first modeling runs that we've done, it was just an initial. It was just like, do we have enough information to feel comfortable with proceeding on to phase 2? Ultimately, what comes out of our phase 2, which really phase 2 is the actual field testing of ASR. We're actually going to pilot test here pretty shortly. So whatever information that we get from that physical pilot testing might inform the model, and it might actually lead to changes in the model, and ultimately there'll be additional modeling runs. Again, we're seeing certain losses based on where we located certain wells within that initial modeling run. Maybe we might place them in different locations, which might make the project more efficient for us. So we talked about seeing losses in the 25 to 30%. Maybe by locating them somewhere else, or those losses get less, which would be ultimately a benefit to the project. So again, those are just initial numbers that we looked at to gain information to allow us to decide whether or not to proceed on to phase 2. But-
How much water does your treatment plant make right now?
So, so right now, we're probably with the water transfer work and for the ASR work, we're probably looking at about 8 to 9 MGD.
Is what you make right now?
Typically, we'd make somewhere in the 6 to 7
Oh,
MGD.
okay.
And there was actually a couple of years where we were just right around 6. So in terms of capacity, the plan would handle the additional capacity.
Can handle?
Can't handle, at least
So
for,
you're
at least for these
you're gonna-
pilot work, for these pilot projects.
And my understanding is you're gonna upgrade that facility significantly because of the septic leachate into the river.
Correct,
That's where
correct.
the-
There's completely separate, project that would ultimately rehab the Grand Hill Water Treatment Plant. But at least for the pilot work
Yeah,
that
for
we're
the
doing.
pilot work,
For the
you're
pilot work
fine.
that we're doing, there's enough capacity there right now, for at least this one.
So your pilot work is what? How much, how much?
So for piloting work of ASR, we're looking at injecting roughly about 400 gallons per minute. Our pilot test is gonna be broken down into 3 different cycles. And can I hand out this? Just pass this down.
Make sure you give Emma one, because we'll include that as part of the minutes to the.
You're gonna need one.
I have that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, just remember 1 million gallons is about 3 acre feet.
Well, he hasn't even gotten to acre feet.
I know, he won't, that's the
Gallons per
thing.
minute.
That side of 41st is 1 million
Billion
gallons.
gallons.
Oh, thank you.
So maybe if you guys just jump all the way to that 3rd page of that handout.
Pilot testing.
It actually has the breakdown of our piloting work. As I mentioned, we're going to do 3 cycles. Each cycle sort of increases in duration. So for the first cycle, we're looking at injecting for one 24-hour day at a rate of 400 gallons per minute. We'll let that water sit over a period of 2 days and then take it back out in 1 day. And the extraction rate is going to be roughly 700 gallons per minute. And we've chosen 700 because that's what the modeling work was based on. The groundwater modeling work was based on extracting that 1 MGD. And so the impacts that you mentioned that you saw in that TU were based on that 700. Again, could be that once you're out there. One of the main goals for actually field testing ASR is we're trying to assess basin impacts both to neighboring municipal wells, but also private wells. So there will be a lot of monitoring that will take place during this ASR review. So as part of that data analysis and review, we might say, 700 gallons a minute wasn't sustainable. The is way off of what the model told you that you were going to see. So again, future modeling iterations might have a different extraction rate. But right now, this was the starting point. So 1 MGD was the starting point for us. So that's why that extraction rate of 700 gallons per minute is what we're shooting for.
What sort of monitoring wells are you gonna have to be able to see what the impact of this?
So we'll be using all existing city monitoring wells there, both in the A, AA, and the TU.
How close are they to the location? Bell's wells is up here. Most of your Bell's wells are down at the coast.
Yeah, they're, I don't think the figure I showed you shows them, but there are wells off of 30th Avenue, just south of Capitola. We do have SC22 for Soquel Creek, right off of 41st Avenue. We have an Auto Plaza well right over by the Toyota dealership. We do have Corey Street monitoring well that's probably 150 feet from Bell's well.
Okay, good.
So we do have quite.
And then also SC13, which is at Garnet.
Yeah, we'll be going down as far down as our Pleasure Point and Soquel Point monitoring wells.
So between your wells and our wells, we'll have it covered fairly well. Good. That'd be great.
Right. Then we certainly appreciate the cooperation and the effort that Soquel Creek will provide in terms of allowing us to access some of their wells and providing some of that data. So again, we talked about cycle 1, and then ultimately cycle 3 is the longest duration cycle, where we're actually going to inject for 30 days, let it sit for 60 days, and then take it back out in 30 days. you'll notice that the rate of extraction for the 30 days is much less. And that's because our current pump is only limited to about 400 gallons per minute. So that's why that 400 gallons per minute is shown on here instead of that 700. So for the long-term test, because for the most part, we won't even, for belt 12, we don't even get to 400 gallons per minute. On the average, we go somewhere between 200 and 250, closer to 250 on average for belts 12. But for this longer test, the current pump or the permanent pump that's out there only allows us to go up to 400. So that's why we're showing 400 on there.
So how are you gonna do the 700 for the?
So we put in a temporary test pump.
Okay.
So we brought
Like
a
a
pump.
booster pump?
Excuse me?
A booster pump?
No, it's just
or-
a pump company came in and installed that for us. It's a
Oh.
pump that they own and operate, so it's their pump, so we're only using it temporarily. So we'll use it for the first 2 cycles. Yeah, in terms of schedule, the actual physical ASR work is slated to happen as soon as we can get our permit approval from the regional board, hopefully within the next 2 weeks here, maybe as early as next week. But we're hoping to start sometime in December and wrap up sometime in May.
Yeah, and any lessons you learned from that permitting process, please share with us.
Yeah, and like I said, you know, we certainly appreciate the coordination that we've had with your staff and the access to some of your data. So we'll certainly share our data and the lessons that we learned from this work.
I assume you're gonna dechlorinate before you put it in?
Yeah, so as part of our phase 3 recovery, we'll actually need approval from DDW. DDW, the Division of Drinking Water, did not require that we have a permit application or amendment to our current permit through them, but they did want us to submit all the data from cycles 1 and 2, and then ultimately we have to prove that cycle 3, the water quality is good enough for us to send to our distribution system, because cycle 3 will actually go into our distribution system and out to our customers, whereas cycles 1 and 2 will actually go to storm drain.
And maybe make it to Soquel Creek?
Hopefully not. We have valves, so we can actually valve it off, so it won't actually impact the water transfer project at all. If both of the schedules were to overlap with one another, we have ways to valve that off. But we have modified the schedule to push out cycle 3 so that the projects aren't necessarily in conflict with one another, where the water transfer project would happen sometime, it's supposed to happen between, as Ron mentioned, between November and April. We're hoping that cycle 3 actually happens sometime, or at least the recovery happens late April and then into May.
Couple of, thanks for the detail on this, couple of observations. So it looks like your recovery volume is, 3.5 acre feet more than your injection volume. What was the purpose of that?
So again, the recovery, this recovery volume is based on those rates, those recovery rates. The shorter term rates are that 700 gallons per minute, which is what we used in our modeling efforts. Ultimately, the longer cycle 3 test is limited by what our physical equipment can do, our permanent equipment can do, and that's a much lower rate. But because it is those, you do see a recovery rate of 700 versus an injection rate of only 400 for the 2/3. That's what the difference is. It's really
Okay, I just was wondering if that was necessary to pull out more than you're putting in.
So because ultimately we are trying to show that the modeling, groundwater modeling that we did is somewhere accurate, because we did start off with that 700 extraction rate. We're trying to mimic that out in the field.
And is there no way to not dump it down the storm drain?
Yeah.
We asked, the county did, and unfortunately there isn't.
No way to capture that.
Wow.
Simply because, again, we haven't gotten enough information to say that it will be potable water. Hopefully during cycle 3, we've done enough to say, okay, you know, during cycles 1 and 2, we've gotten all this water quality information. And, you know, it's just as good as what we have out there right now, and we can send it to our distribution system.
There are portable water quality treatment units.
Well, I mean, what's going into the ground is potable, because it comes
Yeah,
from their supply
it-
system.
Right,
And what they take out of the ground today is potable, because they use that in their summertime.
right.
So,
I'm just trying to keep it from going in the storm drain.
I
Yeah.
know,
And just getting used.
I know.
Yeah, well, some of the modeling work that we did was also a geochemical interaction model to see whether or not there was any adverse reactions when you mix treated surface water and groundwater. And that was done during phase 1. We didn't see anything that raised the flag. There wasn't anything of concern. So again, we proceeded on to phase 2, but phase 2 will actually, we're proofing that on the field.
Right.
So we'll see whether or not there is any actual adverse reaction once it sits there for 30 days during cycle 3.
It's too bad you can't use it to water the park or something.
It's not much there.
No, it's actually going to go to the storm drain, ultimately where they'll live.
So
They're gonna do it in the winter time too, so.
the test will be at Soquel, was that where?
Correct, it's at Bell's 12, which is off of Research Park.
Mhm.
Research Park Drive, just south of Soquel,
Yeah, like Quarry.
FedEx.
Station.
right next to the FedEx facility.
Yeah. Do you have something similar planned for the Santa Margarita?
We do. Unfortunately, there wasn't a existing well that we could use, or that other agencies would allow us to use. And the critical thing was getting Grandma water, treated water up there.
Yeah.
We just don't have water or a system that gets water all the way up there.
Bucket brigade.
Yeah.
So for Santa Margarita,
It'll take a few years
we
to
might
test
have a phased approach to our actual ASR pilot testing,
Gotcha.
where the first phase, we just drill the well, do some hydraulic testing, things like that for the aquifer, and then based on that information, decide whether or not the city will commit to building a pipeline all the way up there, just for pilot testing.
I was gonna mention that one of the things that was in the report for the Sustainable Groundwater Agency, I think it was last month, from the city, said, some modeling results presented to the advisory committee indicated water levels in key monitoring wells dropping below protected elevations during periods of drought withdrawal. So that clearly is an issue for all this, is to make sure.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we extended it all the way up
Yeah.
here to the coast.
Yeah.
That's where we currently have monitoring wells with those established protected elevations.
You're really in proof of concept kind of mindset, right?
Yeah, right now, like I said, you can only do so much in terms of paper studies. You're actually going out there now and proofing it in
Yes,
the field.
that's great.
Mhm.
One thing, though, that is also happening at this time frame is that we would be, at least the first 2 cycles, we wouldn't be pumping O'Neill, Main Street, and Garnet.
Yep.
And those are not necessarily real-world situations, but
No.
we're gonna look for impacts, and I think we can extrapolate what the groundwater levels would have been if those wells were operating, and then we're just looking at the difference in water levels based on the injection and extraction.
Right, because our groundwater modeling was done assuming that those facilities were on. So
Should be
that is a
somewhat
distinction.
additive.
Yeah.
And
that-
for phase 3, they will be on.
Right,
Yeah.
right, in April, or
Yes,
May,
yes.
beginning of May.
So we have both conditions.
I had a question about the extraction rate. You said for the long-term project was about 4 million gallons?
For cycle 3,
No, I think you were talking about, oh, you were talking about just the test.
just the cycle, yeah, just the test.
No, it was the overall project.
Yeah, that you would be,
Four
you'd
million?
11
be
to 12.
injecting 5.5 million gallons
Right,
and
so the
recovering
injection
4.
rate is at roughly half an MGD, and the extraction rate is supposed to come out at 1 MGD, or closer to that 700 gallons per minute.
So then in our,
No,
No, I
that's for
meant
the test.
like not the test, but for.
Actual operation.
Yeah, actual
Yeah.
operation. How many million gallons a day would you need from each basin?
So right now, we've split everything in half. So the modeling work that we've done is we were gonna store 1.5 in each of the basins, and then take out,
.75,
it would be like 0.8 of that 1.5 that we put in.
okay.
billion gallons.
And that's over 2 years?
So we would inject,
Three.
right, we would inject for 3 years and then extract potentially for
Over
2
2.
years.
But are
Whether or
you
not
extracting-
realistically that's the way it's gonna operate, it's still true.
And then are you extracting during those years in the same average amount, or is it peak in the summer? Because that's where your shortfall is in the summer, right?
Right, so,
It'd be over like,
That's what we're
yeah.
overlooking
Yeah.
a lot.
right, so that's where I was wondering about that 4 million gallons a day, because I thought if you
So right
take it
now,
over a
yeah,
6-month
right now it's just
period,
an
it would
average,
be.
just an average over a
Okay,
certain
so it would
year,
be,
yeah.
in actual terms, it would be like 4 million gallons a day from our basin over a 6-month period for 2 years.
Well, again, I mean, the day-to-day operation hasn't been looked at in detail. Right now, we're just trying to get some of the information that, you know, that allows the city to make a decision in terms of whether or not this is gonna be a viable project. But the way the the ASR project would operate on a day-to-day basis is still sort of, hasn't been looked at in detail. But we are, right now, we're just looking at annual averages.
I know we got other items on there, but a question that's I've always wondered about is the loss, you know, I mean, you don't know when your next drought's gonna be, so you gotta constantly be pushing in every year. I mean, is that the way the modeling's working, or
Well, you know,
to account for that?
Right. No, well, at some point, you have to decide whether or not you should stop, because your losses are only gonna get bigger. There's only so much that you can put into a basin before your losses start getting greater and greater.
Does that jeopardize you though if a big drought comes and you haven't done it the last year or two, or is it not moving that fast away from you? I haven't been able to conceptualize, flow out to the ocean. So
I was gonna talk about this later, but this is relevant. This is the studies that Scotts Valley has been doing. Of course, they're looking at purified water going into the basin. And you see here, they're putting in 600 acre feet per year. It starts going up and up and up and up, and it gets flatter and flatter and flatter. And basically, at this point, they're still putting in 600 acre feet, but it's not going up anymore. Because as it goes up, the gradient to streams goes up, and stream flow goes up considerably.
Yeah.
Diminishing returns.
And so the problem is that if you were to ever turn that off, that's what would happen. It would go right back down to where it was before. In fact, it goes
Lower.
It's a hysteresis curve. So it goes up fast, slows down, and then you turn it off, it goes down fast, and then slows down. And in fact, these are some things from our model for our basin. You see it goes up fast, flattens off, and goes flat, 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 flat. And then you turn the water off, it goes right back down again. Now that's just simply putting water into the basin and stop putting water in the basin.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that Scotts Valley did was they said, okay, what happens if we actually use this basin? We just don't fill it up and sit there with it. Rather, we have a drought, we take water out. So here you see a drought started here, and within actually 2 years, it's down below where it started. In 3 years, it's way down below where it started. So this is one of the key issues for me, is that if we start taking water out of this basin, there's not much recharge because we're in a drought. The city can't give us much water because it's a drought. We need water for our customers, they need water for their customers, and that kind of thing could happen. In fact, that's what this quote is basically saying, is that when you start taking it out, it can go down real quickly. So that's my concern about this thing. And in fact,
Yeah.
I keep telling people, I think the only way that we can do ASR is to have pure water. Because if you have a supply going into the basin, that wouldn't go down like that. Because we'd be putting water in constantly.
And the whole point is to get it up so we can keep the seawater from coming in, and
But
we've
you
got
can only
until
get-
2040,
But you can only get it up so far.
Gotta be
Depending
sustainable.
on how much water you
Yeah.
put in, it limits itself.
And I think that's a common theme that we're headed toward. It's not a this or that. It's a combo that's gonna be needed. So probably, at least to help Santa Cruz too.
Right.
All right, I wanna make sure we have enough time to discuss, get to some of the pure water stuff, and because Ken had some cost questions at one of our last meetings, so.
Well, we're going half an hour, why don't we switch over to that?
All right, well, I wanna make sure we exceed.
Yeah, I guess just lastly to your point, one of the future ground modeling iterations will include both the ASR and the pure water project. Right.
Yeah, and Jay's gonna have that.
I did have one question. You talked about 25 to 30% loss in mid-county. Is that loss per day, per week, per month, per year, per decade, per century?
It's sort of, it was over our planning period. So that was sort of like the highest loss over that planning period.
So the 5 years you're talking about?
No, actually, when we did our modeling runs, we actually had a longer planning period. So when we were looking at some of our extraction, this is just water levels.
Yes.
But it's starting in sort of 2020-2021 time period and goes all the way out to 2031. So when we were looking at losses, this is sort of like cumulative losses over this sort of planning period.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. Thank you for the presentation. Dr. Daniels, what's the source of that study that you put out on the table here?
Scotts Valley.
Scotts Valley?
Kenny
Scott-
Jinks, dead for Scotts Valley.
Okay, thank you. Is there any way that Soquel Creek Water District can sort of combine the Twin Lakes pilot recharge with this ASR? It pains me to hear that both of your districts are going to be dumping tremendous amounts of water into the storm drains for your two projects. Is there any way that you could use the water from the ASR and use it for the groundwater recharge pilot project at Twin Lakes to do that testing?
Thank you, we'll consider that. I thank you. So,
Okay, pure water? Does that help for that?
so Ken, you had asked last time about cost.
And common elements with the city.
You can comment on that. So as part of that effort, yeah, well, yeah, I'll let you speak to it, but so as part of that effort, and we know there's a lot of misunderstanding out there about costs, and some numbers were developed back in 2013, and some in real recently, so we hired an engineering firm, Brown and Caldwell, to do a technical evaluation to try to do an apples-to-apples comparison. I really like the slides that were presented, but versus the actual technical memorandum, because it's
Got a magic wand.
It's not like the old days.
So, Melanie, you should really run through this. Okay, well, I'll give it a shot, but to honor your request, so we got us thinking it was a good idea, so the consultant went through all these different reports and used the different information from the city of Santa Cruz, the 2013 Kennedy Jinks study that was done on the transfers, our study recently done on our Pure Water Soquel project. This is from Deepwater D-Cell. I won't focus on that too much. And so it recognizes all the costs, or what they call class 4 engineering, so there's a plus or minus range of accuracy. They put in an escalation of 5%, and they talk about where that comes from. It's a recommended number, or 6% is, and took into account, inflation over time, because they're estimating these numbers up to 2022, so everything is in apples to apples. Again, how they derive that escalation factor that they used, and it's coming citing engineering data. And so the option one they looked at, and this is where, and that is the short term, and there's a lot of confusion about that. People think because we're being charged
$1,000 a million gallons.
it's not, yeah, that's going to be the cost. And Rosemary said it eloquently at the opening of the valve. That's a research project cost, but so that way they don't. It's not applicable necessarily to Prop 218 maybe. All right, and then here is the long-term study done by Kenny Jinks.
And just to pause on that, we did work with the city of Santa Cruz on what cost assumptions to use.
Yeah.
On the North Coast.
About the whole step, this
Okay.
whole memo that was surrounded this.
And then on B, let me just see that, so in the potential long-term, so that's assuming that you and or the city of Santa Cruz would take additional water on the San Lorenzo
Right.
and go through fish and game, fish and wildlife.
Yeah, get a legal, get water rights changed and all that, but
Right.
definitely they'd be taking more water from the river.
And
That's
then,
the whole
but that would
concept.
probably be like a 10 to 15-year project.
Who knows, I'm not gonna speculate on
Yeah.
what the city.
But it would take longer.
Maybe Cedro can.
And it also included Scotts Valley as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so, yeah, so I don't wanna belabor it, but here is the discounted or nominal cost, and I think that's been made clear by the city of Santa
Right.
Cruz now.
The pilot project.
Yeah, for the pilot project. If you were to use what they charge outside customers, which as far as 218 goes, they were just to sell us water, Prop 218 would probably have to be in this range per acre foot. not that range. You know, if they're gonna adhere to Prop 218.
Commercial, okay.
Yeah, the
We're
commercial
a
range.
municipal agency, so.
Yeah, and actually, we've been talking to them about getting some water in that, it's not too far off. So, here's what the KJ, Kennedy Jinx report did in 2013, these are their numbers. I don't wanna harp on them because we wanna put them all up to 2022 to see what Chronicle will do.
And they did that work for the city?
They did that work for the city, yes,
Yeah.
KJ, did, or for the county.
County.
It was a
Oh,
county,
the county,
yeah,
okay.
the county.
Can I interrupt?
So many
I've been
entities.
informed there's a BMW in the lot that's running. Do you guys have anybody running BMW?
I
Do
see
you have a
it, but-
BMW?
Is that
No.
yours?
It might be running.
I think it is.
Do you want me to go do it?
Yeah, yeah. It's right out here, I think.
Thanks.
I didn't know we could let you do that anymore.
I
I did that with my car because it's so quiet.
That
I came
is
back and
okay.
it was still running. Oh my gosh. So, anyway, did I just say that on film? Anyway, the in lieu with San Lorenzo, that was looked at. I'm trying to get down to the bottom table where you can see all of the comparisons, but if I'm going too fast. And then with Pure Water, they looked at Pure Water too. Their cost in 2017, so this number isn't put up to 2018. So when we get through there, using the escalation factors, this is what it came up for Pure Water.
That's assuming no grants.
And that's assuming no grants, no cost sharing, anything like that, for sure.
So pure water would be less than river transfer, more or less, is that what I'm seeing?
Right, well, I'll jump to the bottom line. Here's the D-cell. That, you know, the numbers, they're a little bit behind, so even,
There's
you know,
just
we'll have
a
to see.
lot dependent upon subsidies from the data center.
Yeah, so here's an interesting slide. So, scenario 4 out of the Kennedy Jinx for the long-term San Lorenzo River, the cost is this. This is not all inclusive of everything. This is the cost just to do what's necessary to get the water thing here. Then here was the scenario 5, which is a little bit more. And then here was Pure Water's cost, assuming tertiary at the city of Santa Cruz and purification somewhere off-site.
Now, is that the same capacity or different
It
capacity?
is not.
Yeah.
And
It's
so
not
you can
capacity.
see here,
Here's the
for
cost
this
breaker
one,
for
this is
Oh, I
typically,
see.
this would yield about, about 800 acre-feet. This one here would go, about 1,700. If you go into the report, you can see that these treatment upgrades, based on the KJ analysis, has different water availability for, this one allowed for both Soquel Creek and Scotts Valley to have some
Oh,
water.
I see. On the long-term San Lorenzo, and then after fishing game and some years go by.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I mean, there's a
Pure
lot of
Water's-
other
yeah.
factors. If you're talking about timeliness and stuff, I mean,
Yeah.
you could, and actually Melanie did that. She compared,
Mhm.
or you did, or Brown and Caldwell, somebody did. Maybe it's in here, I think in
So
your
those are
presentation.
all apples to apples,
These are
years
apples
to
to
year.
apples, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So we want, I think this is what you were looking for?
Yeah,
basically?
actually, I was looking at that, and then also, if and when the city of Santa Cruz is the city of Santa Cruz ever going to mix in any treated wastewater into their groundwater recharge projects, or that's not on the table yet at all?
Well, it is.
Uh-huh.
That's-
Wasac told them to go and investigate 3 things. One is kind of a semi,
Uh-huh.
a lot of things. One is water transfers of various kinds, ASR and in lieu and all that stuff. One is recharged water, pure water, and the other is desal.
Uh-huh.
And then in the end of 2020, they were supposed to come together and have the costs for all those things
Uh-huh.
and make a decision about which of those things they're actually going to do.
Mhm. Okay.
So just at the Santa Cruz Council meeting, they did go forward with the staff recommendation, and Joe, you can probably talk about this more. They supported continuing the recycled water, like what Director Daniel said, and at this point to cease evaluation on desal.
That is
So
correct.
their focus now is just on surface water maximization and.
Right. But then they're gonna look long-term both at desal and at recharge.
Well, D-cell's taken off the table now,
Oh,
recycled
okay.
water and river water. I think the difference, one of the things about their process is, they had 13 people for the WASAC, 13, 14, something like that. And they came to the conclusion, based on their values or whatever, that their priority project was taking more water from the river. And I think even the cost of, even if it costs 30% more than the second option.
Yeah.
And that is sort of our,
They're
So
willing,
that's their high priority.
yeah, that's their, whatever, based on
Yeah.
whatever, that's their.
Yeah, that's their priority.
That's their priority, that's how they've done it.
So when they go to look at them, they might decide to do both, but right
Yeah,
now,
that's
the
the
notion is
highest
they would
priority.
pick one.
Yeah,
Cedro,
right.
do you know, do you have water rights for that volume of water, or that would be also including?
no, we were going through a water rights, sort of, there's a different path that'll hopefully change our point of views in terms of water rights that would allow us to use Felton, sort of a point of use petition that would allow us to use Felton in addition to our San Lorenzo River intake. So we have started a different process for
They
that.
started
Because
the
there's a whole nother thing to
Yeah.
get in there, and is, where is that additional water
Yeah.
gonna come from?
Right, so hopefully that, like, we did start that process, and hopefully some of that additional water will come from that.
Yeah, they launched an EIR for the water rights a couple of weeks ago or something.
But just for the water
Yeah,
rights,
not for the
not for the
projects.
project.
Yeah,
So we'll see how that pans
so
out.
that's what this CEQA thing is here?
No, that's different, that's
That's
just
different.
specific to the
Okay.
ASR and any permit associated
Is
with
it-
piloting of ASR.
That's for the pilot,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, I don't know, yeah, this does not include the grant funding or anything
Yeah,
like
so
that.
that's just straight money.
Straight money. Yeah, that, and I think Brown College just tried to do it, apples to
Yeah,
apples. So
that's very
you can
nice.
see where, this was to help clarify some of the misconceptions, like, oh, you're gonna get it for $330 an acre foot or something like that. And if you think that, gosh, it does seem like, why wouldn't you just do that? Well, of course, it's limited, the volume, and it's
Well,
a,
if it was, I think we should.
yeah, if it is, we probably would. I think the board would go there. So I don't know. Yeah, in an instant. So and then there's a thing here about our community values, 6 values, who are reliability, quality of water, timeliness, minimize environmental impacts. Actually, this was get her done fast, what they said, as quick as possible, because seawater intrusion's eroding us every day. Everybody agrees we gotta have high quality water, there's no doubt. And make it scalable if you can, and as affordable as possible.
And these 6 qualities came from numerous community surveys that the district did, both telephone surveys as well as online surveys. So this is, I think we had given them like 9 or 10 different types of qualities. Again, if you were coming from everybody has maybe a preference or a bias towards one water supply option versus another based, too much energy or, water quality or, a passion for saving water for fish or something. But taking all of that out and just what's important to you in a water supply option, this is how they ranked out.
Yeah, so what we did is we took these community values and then tried to take a science-based approach to see what option does that lead us to. So we didn't assume pure water or recycled water.
Right.
We didn't assume desalinization was the right pathway or the river transfer. So again, kind of using a science-based approach driven by the qualities of and the values of our community, what they've expressed, to see where that leads us.
What's the timeliness? When is this saltwater intrusion likely to worsen?
As we speak.
I think you can speak to that,
Yeah.
right?
I don't know if y'all know Pete's story, but over the last 2 years, your well got intruded by seawater intrusion.
Very badly, yeah, and we keep hearing of other wells around that are having the same
Having
problem.
the same issue. So he had to give back the money that he rents the property out to because the farmer can't grow crops.
Yeah.
And where do you live? Where do you live, or where's this well located?
This is off San Andreas Road.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We serve his
Yeah.
residential house, but he
Uh-huh.
has a private well on the property.
Oh, in addition to that,
Mhm.
yeah, his service to you,
Yeah, when people ask me, when do you want to see the project, I say yesterday.
last year.
Well, yeah, we would have been
Even
good to
better.
have it 30 years ago down in Pajaro for sure. You know, I visualize it like a cliff. Just think how people would respond if we thought about erosion and every day a little bit of the cliff was falling off East Cliff. I mean, you know, there would be that sense of urgency, yeah. And because you can't see it, I think people tend to think, well, it's okay to wait, but we're losing property. It's just water property as we speak.
So in summary on this whole thing, so the city of Santa Cruz is proceeding on their North Coast water transfer, and then potentially, if they get all the permits they need for fishing, game, fishing, and wildlife, they're pursuing recharge of the aquifer with.
Well, they'll launch an EIR to do that.
But that'll be a process. It'll take
Yeah,
a certain number of years.
And we're
For
working
San
with,
Lorenzo.
I mean, very closely. Don't you think we have a good?
Yeah, like as you mentioned earlier, for the city, we're looking at a timeline of 2020 to make a decision in terms of what the city's direction will be, and most likely it'll be a portfolio of options.
Yeah, and then, but the city is still looking at treated wastewater in terms of aquifer storage and recovery.
Yeah.
And does that come into your pilot at a certain point in time?
Not yet. As we mentioned earlier, there was 3 options that the Water Supply Advisory Committee chose. The first one was this water exchange, or in what most people would commonly refer to as in lieu. The second one was ASR, and then the third was either an IPR project or a desal project.
What's IPR again?
It's just taking wastewater, injecting it, and letting it sit there for X amount of time. So those sort of like the 3 different elements that were selected by our Water Supply Advisory Committee.
So are you pursuing IPR at a certain time?
So right now, the 3 elements are being advanced to the point where we can make a decision in 2020 as to which one should be selected, or say a combination of those 3 should be selected as the city's future.
And does the Soquel Creek get to discuss with you all, you know, if you were gonna do an IPR, you know, what elements would be in common with Soquel Creek and which common elements would be with the city of Santa Cruz, sort of to optimize the joint development of that?
Let me tackle that one.
Sure.
I think, you know, what we've tried very hard to do is honor what we call the WASAC process. And they wanted the city really to look at river water first, even if it costs that premium, and then get to the second. So the way our project is being designed, that's why the scalability, you'd have to go through another EIR. If the city wants to come talk to us about that later, fine. But they're approaching it the way they agreed to in their WASAC process right now. And we don't want to disturb that.
Sure. So basically you'll proceed on pure water, Soquel treated wastewater, and then they're gonna pursue the river water treatment and aquifer storage. And then at some point in time, the city will maybe start looking at treated water, wastewater, aquifer storage, or whatever they end up doing with it. But that's still not an urgent or pressing issue for the city at this point.
Well, no, Ken, I think what the Cedar was saying, they haven't said that they're pursuing like full-on in lieu or ASR. They're, right now, everything is under the umbrella of feasibility and analysis.
Right.
And then at the end of 2020,
That's when they'll start.
then they're gonna go back to the council with a recommendation on what to do next and kind of define what the project would be, and then go forward with the development of that, which
Okay.
could
Well,
be
they have to do an EIR on the project.
Yeah.
'Cause they don't even know it's gonna work yet, you know?
Yeah, so they're still in quote-unquote pilot studies,
Yeah.
feasibility studies.
Right.
And then in 2020, they'll make a decision in terms of a direction.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. That helps.
Yeah, and we're working with them continuously, like.
Yeah.
about
It's
that.
actually good just to know that basic stuff.
Yeah, it is, and a lot of that's not
It's so
out there.
complicated.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that clarifies a lot.
And one of the issues is that there's a different risk profile.
Mhm.
You know, if we screw up, we'll get the saltwater intrusion, because we
Right.
know now it's right there.
Yeah.
The city screws up, kind of like they did 2 years ago with,
Mhm.
you know, the drought that they had. They can start rationing their customers and take down use and weather the storm, and then afterwards, there's no damage. They can just start using the
Yeah,
water
no
that comes down
permanent
the river.
damage as opposed to seawater intrusion,
Right.
exactly.
So we feel we need to hurry,
Sure.
and the city can take their time and study it more closely and detailed, and that works for them. So.
inclement weather. So,
Thank you. Thank you for that report. I have I just want to also interject because I did attend the EIR or the meetings for the amended water rights for the Santa Cruz City that Soquel Creek and Central are both being included in the place of use amendments for the San Lorenzo River water rights. And I want to ask for clarification on the apples to apples price per acre foot. Does that include the cost of land for Pure Water Soquel? And what about with the city's price? Does that include what the city feels would be necessary system upgrades to accommodate this increase in service?
So I can answer that. The Pure Water Soquel costs do include property acquisition. For the city of Santa Cruz, I think we should mention that in a previous water commission meeting, there was a memo related to costs for in lieu. And in there, it cites the cost from the KJ memo. And then it also included, it said, we also recognize that there's like $300 million in infrastructure CIP costs that are also going to be burdened by the city. So at this point, they're not rolled into this, but I'm assuming that as they go forward in developing their CIP project, those costs would then be
Some
burdened
portion, at least.
into their water cost.
So these are low end numbers for them.
So the capital improvement costs are not part of that per acre foot?
For the infrastructure related to developing this new amount of water that was shown at 800 and 1,700 acre feet, yes, but the city is also undergoing this.
350 million, I think, is what your estimate is.
Yes.
A lot of that is not.
That's what this document mentions.
Mhm.
So I
Okay.
want to make sure.
Thank you.
Okay, we have 4 minutes. Any information from committee members to impart?
Do you want me to hit on the pure water real quick?
Do you want to do what?
Should I hit any more on the
You
pure
want
water?
to update on Pure
Yes,
Water?
please.
Anything more on pure water?
Just to let the committee members know that the final EIR, which includes the draft EIR and the responses to comments, is available on our website. We did release it on Friday. The response to comment document is required to be released to 5 public agencies that submitted comments. And so when we provided the response to comment document to them, we also put it on our website. And so it is out for review, and it will be agendized for our December 18th board meeting for consideration of certification and potential project approval. And
So
there
it's a
is-
great meeting to attend, so I
Right.
encourage you all to come, express your viewpoints.
Well, congratulations on getting it that far.
Thank you. Yeah, they hustle. We didn't know they were gonna get it done that quickly, but kudos to the CEQA outfit.
Any questions?
Comment? I do. Becky Steinbruner, I see that it was put out much earlier than what it was announced at your board meetings. It would be available to the public. And because only those who submitted comment have been notified that it is available officially, and because it's a 740-page document, I question why the district is only giving the public 10 days to submit comment and respond to this very critical document. I have begun looking through it. I can't get it on my computer because it is such a large document. So I am restricted to either going to the public library or coming here, and thank you, this is the only hard copy available here, but it's only available to the public during Monday through Friday business hours. The comments that the response to comments that I have read, specifically to Mr. Ricker's, very poignant comments, are very vague and do not properly respond to his very critical questions for documentation. And so I would like to know if the district would please extend public comment for this, and how you are noticing the public other than just through your website, and notifying those who did submit comment about how you're noticing the availability of this document.
Thank you, Becky. We'll share your comments with the CEQA team. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So we're done, 5 o'clock. sorry.
Can I pass something out?
Perfect timing.
I just have, just browsing around on the internet, the City of Santa Cruz Water Department, we were just talking about their notice of preparation of an environmental impact report for the Santa Cruz Water Rights Project. I printed the first page out of the 48-page document, and it has, I've highlighted a website, a link that you can go to, and you can read the full thing as well as a couple of previous things. And I think if you really want to know what the city needs to do in order to get those water rights to give us more, anybody more in lieu, that would be really good to read that and realize what's involved. So I have it myself.
Thank you.
Pass it around. Like to see that? Go ahead and pass it around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Becky, do you want one of these?
If there's an extra, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
I only made a few copies.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Do you want-
Today is Tuesday, December 18th, 2018. So this is the response to comments, but it's not the complete EIR.
That's what this
Final.
one is, responses to comments.
This is
This is responses to comments also. So it's not the final EIR.
Today is Thursday, December 27th, 2018. It's close to 5 p.m. This is 2505 Chanticleer, where Soquel Creek Water District should have posted notice of their notice of determination for their project, the Pure Water Soquel project. There is no posting here. And again, this is a 2505 Chanticleer, the site of proposed Pure Water Soquel. There is no posting here of the notice of determination, which is also required under CEQA law. Frontage road. This is the Lamb property. Parcel number 029-013-54, I think it is, either 54 or 57. It's in the estate of Arthur F. Lamb. Currently in closed negotiations with Soquel Creek Water District for the Chanticleer treatment facility. Still no sign of any posting at the site. Tagging, but nothing posted within public view. And just of interest, this house was built in 1942. It's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, about 1,100 square feet. And the property was subdivided in 1900. owned by Arthur Eflin. And I am curious about what appears to be a well on the site. This is, again, Thursday, December 27th, 2018. It's after 5 p.m. This is the entrance to Soquel Creek Water District. They are supposed to have posted here a copy of the Notice of Determination for the Soquel Creek Water District for Water Soquel project. This is not what they have posted here. Is the agenda for the December 18th meeting. But there is no notice of determination posted for the public to view at their office, which, given that their project has not yet decided where they're going to locate it, should be here at least, at the very least, at their offices, but is not.